Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Marketing Share podcast, Alec and
Hi,
Barb.
Barb. Good to be here. Welcome, listeners. Thanks for tuning in. Well, our topic for today is websites. If you're a marketer, you're eventually going to have to do a website project, and if you don't know the first thing about websites, it's like one of these. It's a black hole you can fall into.
Yeah. And, playing the game of who gets what on the website can
Yeah,
be a really fun game,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So we're going to talk to a guest today that can answer a few questions about websites. Because I'm just kind of joking, but it's not really a joke. It is serious. Websites are tricky. Of course, websites have been around forever, but if you've never been responsible for a website, there's a lot of stuff that goes into making a website and creating one, whether you're launching one from start or redesigning or refreshing an existing one. There's a reason why these things sometimes are month-long projects. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And
And
there's
it
a
can
lot
be
of
even
things.
longer than a month long sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be 4 or 5 months depending on how big your website is. So today's guest is a fellow marketer of ours who we know through our marketing community. Her name is Stephanie Brooks. And in addition to just being a great marketing leader and a specialist, but one of the areas that she has a lot of experience in is websites. And so I thought it'd be great to have her on the show, ask her some questions so that you can get a little more familiar with kind of what goes on in a website. She has done a bunch of different websites. I remember her telling me that the largest website she'd ever done is a 400-page website, which I thought, okay, that makes her qualified to talk about website builds. So, anyways, that's why I thought it'd be fun to talk to her.
Yeah, she's a generally well-rounded marketing leader for sure, but she has the special expertise in website development. And I love how she's got this practical knowledge. She just finished this project with you, which will make it really
Hmm.
fun, right? It's
That's
top of
right.
mind.
Yep. Sure
Cool.
enough. All right. Well, let's go talk to Stephanie. Hey, Barb.
Hey, Alec, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Stephanie, great to have you on our show.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, so Stephanie, I want to jump right in. I know you have just worked on a project with my buddy Alec here, but give us a little quick snapshot of your kind of career journey and maybe how you got to this latest project with Alec. That'd be fun.
Sure. Yeah. So, like all of us, I had a really big grand plan. I was very strategic in everything I did. Every move was supported by the FRIAR move. I
Yeah, me too. I've had that.
I majored in journalism and I ended up getting a copywriting job right out of college and found out that I'm actually really good at putting pieces together and puzzles together and marketing. And I'm really good at problem solving. Also, journalism didn't pay anything, and believe it or not, marketing paid slightly better than journalism. So I went into marketing. I ended up just really enjoying it. Then eventually, I went back to school and got a master's degree in marketing, and ran into somebody, a woman at a networking event, who told me about this great CMO group that I know you both from, and then Alec was looking for some help. So I said, hey, I'm available, because I was at the time running a startup. And one thing led to another. We spent the last 4 months being work adjacent because he was running off doing a very big project while I was just keeping the ship running.
Yes, and it was a great 4 months.
Yes.
I'll do a mini plug for Stephanie here. Awesome marketer. So if anyone needs great marketing help, leadership, or executional, you got to
I
contact
love
Stephanie.
that, marketing's often like that, right? It's kind of who you know, who's got a project that's available and so forth. Because we're never really, doing that roadmap down for our career very often, right? It's kind of who you know, who needs some help. You'd be great for this, check it
Hmm.
out. And that's a gift that we have in this group, I think, too, overall.
Yes.
It is. Oh, and then the other thing I'll say, Stephanie, I think the other thing too is that you just plugged in really easily. So, it's like sometimes personality wise, maybe we just gelled, or I don't know, but I think that was another big plus. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed working with you and everybody else. I thought just the culture was phenomenal, and
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Well, that's cool. Okay, but today we're talking about websites.
Yeah.
Because
I love it. Let's dig in because you
yeah,
just
I,
did it, right?
right. We're going through it. We've kind of gotten through the first phase of it, but the reason that I wanted to talk about this and I thought to bring you on, Stephanie, is um, as you know, our podcast here is about helping marketers understand all the different aspects of marketing, especially since there's always going to be some area that you don't know so well, right? We have the things that we're good at, and then we have the things that maybe we don't know so well. Website could be one of these. Website, like, I've done a few websites, but not a ton of them. And if you now have to oversee the launch of a website, whether it's a brand new company or maybe you're trying to redo your company's website, there's a lot of stuff that can bite you if you don't know what to look out for. So that's what we're going to talk about.
This is a great topic, right? Because, and especially new marketers, right, are coming into a business, or if you're starting like a tour of duty role at a company, guess what? The website, how many times have we heard, oh, I hate the website. The website needs an update. Oh my gosh, we're not, hitting the mark on the website at all, blah, blah. So it's almost like the first several projects that you will work on in some of these new companies, right?
Yes, it is. It definitely is. And the reason being for a couple of reasons. People get tired of looking at the same thing over and over and again, but also technology advances quite rapidly, as we know. Also, most websites should be updated every 2 to 4 years. Like they really should be like majorly overhauled every, no less than every 5 years because
Yeah.
technology advances so quickly.
Yeah. So, on the team and skill side, okay. So I'm going to start the project. You've got the marching order. We need to upgrade this. We need to redo it. What have you? How do you look at team and skill set, and how do you assemble that going forward on this project? And how do you know who to outsource, and who you might want to just hire?
That is a really great question. I say that the first part of the team that you really want to consider is all the stakeholders in what is out on the website. So that's usually like the product team, the executive team, customer support. You really want to bring those people into the project very early so they can weigh in on what is important in their area. That is not to say that everything gets included on the website, which I can talk about later. But but you want to include them first. Otherwise, when you're about to launch later on and you go to show them something, they'll go, "Wait, we never said that." So include them right away, get them involved, get their input, find out what they like, what they hate, because I'm sure there's something they hate, and they'll tell you everything they hate first. And then you want to bring in your technical help, your writers, your asset, the people who are going to help you with their assets, so graphic designers, and depending on what platform you use, you may need to have outsourced developers, or you could do it in-house depending on the strength of your team. I have usually worked in very small teams, so it's either outsourced or a lot of times I do it myself, but I'll outsource it to somebody who has more time or talent on it.
Hmm.
And that's usually the development part of it.
Okay. So then if you do go outside, what type of agency, and let's say you got to help, whether it's outsourcing or especially if you go to an agency, a lot of times companies will work with an agency. What should you be looking for in an agency? What's your recommendation to ask the right questions, and what kind of questions should those be?
The biggest thing that I look for is who owns the product. And I've been on both sides. I've been an agency side and in-house. And so I have that unique kind of perspective of being on both sides. Nowadays, it's not as much of a fight, but there used to be a time when agencies would say that they would own kind of they would own the code, or they would own the development, and then you kind of just leased it from them. I am
Mhm.
a firm believer in you owning every single asset of every single piece of your brand.
Mhm.
So you own that code. They hand it over to you. You own that, and you can do whatever you want with it. The other thing you want to make sure is how sustainable is it that they're building for you? Is this something that you're going to have to keep paying them to update over time, or can you do this in-house? If you have the ability to do it in-house. Some people don't have the ability to do it in-house, and that's okay. But you have to make sure that the site maintenance is actually sustainable for you and your business needs instead of just a profit center for that agency, which a lot of agencies do because margins are slim. And I get it. I definitely do. But you want to make sure that, you can manage that website if you have to.
Hmm.
Yeah, like I love that. But, if you develop the site and then I have to call you at, $200 an hour for every little upkeep, that doesn't make a lot of sense for someone, right?
No, it doesn't. You also want to make sure that whatever code base you use, so if you're using WordPress or custom code or anything, you want to make sure that it's updatable with the changing of technology. That anything that Google changes, and especially with indexing and SEO and AIO, that the site can grow with those changes in technology.
Hmm.
Okay, let's go there for a quick minute, right? Because everybody's got their favorites. Do you have like ones that you believe are more updatable or easy to use than others?
I do. I've worked on pretty much every CMS that is out there, including some legacy systems that I think have expired, I
Yeah.
hope. But I've worked on some really awful ones out there, and I won't name them. But my favorite is WordPress. I just know it very well. It's easy for me to use. It's come a long way. I know that there's people like Alec and I. We talked about his experience with WordPress probably 5 years ago, and the page builder back then was not great. But now the page builders are a lot better and more intuitive, a lot more WYSIWYG, which is what you see is what you get. It's basically what you see in any standard word processing toolbox, at the top. So it's much easier for people to change things. I know that a lot of people either love or hate WordPress. There's some security issues. There's hosting issues, but to me, it's the most flexible one that can stay up to date as long as you make sure you don't mess up anything else in the source files.
Okay, besides WordPress, what are the other most common ones that you're going to hear about?
For small to medium sized businesses, I've seen a lot of Wix and Squarespace.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of really cool things you can do in those. Some of it has to do with kind of hacking the HTML, but it's not going to really. Otherwise, a lot of those sites look exactly the same, and I think that's why people either just stay away from them or go to them, depending on their skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some headless ones out there that are, just all custom code. There's some AI generated ones out there now that you really don't have to know anything code related. And it'll do you just can update the front end and you never even have to look at the back end. The larger the organization, probably the more complex a site that you're going to see. And so you probably want a lot more control over whatever that code base is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard Webflow too. How are you feeling about that?
I've used it a couple of times. I don't love it, but some people do. A lot of people love Webflow. I just personally haven't really ever gotten into it.
Yeah, our developers use WordPress most commonly as well.
Let me also interject real quickly because we're using some lingo here. And I remember when I first came across the lingo, even though I'm a marketer, I had no idea what it meant. So we're saying CMS. So for our listeners, if you don't know what CMS is, it stands for Content Management System, right? So that's the term used to define like when a website is, you use a CMS to organize all of your content into a site. So all the different options we're talking about is CMS. Now you also threw out a term, you said headless CMS. So can you explain what that is?
I haven't heard that one. What's the headless CMS?
Okay. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know it very well.
Yeah. Right. And I don't either. I know that it has a little bit to do with just it has more flexibility or something like that. It means that you can create content, but it can be deployed to multiple different platforms, I think, without worrying about what it looks like, right? Isn't that the concept?
Right. So in the example there, you can do a headless CMS with WordPress, and you basically host all instead of having the plugins in the back end of your WordPress site and you go into your regular admin panel where you can see everything, it's all hosted someplace else. It's updated someplace else. So theoretically, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of grief from this from all the headless CMS people out there, but theoretically, it makes the site load faster and it's more secure because there are issues with security with WordPress, especially if you don't update your PHP, which again is a whole nother term. But if you don't update things on WordPress, that's when there's security issues. And again, WordPress security people, don't come for me. I know there's a lot more. I'm just being very generic here. But I know with the headless stuff that you just keep it in a kind of in another place. It gets fed into the site in like through an API. And again, I'm probably getting this wrong. Because
it's totally fine. I asked you the question in knowing that our scope of what we talk about, we're not trying to be exactly right so that you can be the expert. We're just trying to arm you enough so you know kind of how to talk the lingo and know kind of in essence what it means. So to me, that's like more than enough. I
mean, this falls in the camp of how the sausage is made for sure, right?
Right.
Yes.
So this is probably the area that I would probably outsource it.
Yes, right.
Yeah. But okay, speaking of outsourcing and the budget parameter on everything, talk to me about budget realities, because I always say that there's a great answer for everything, and it usually is around the budget that you're working with, right? And that can vary, widely depending on how big of a scope that you're doing, how many pages on the site, all sorts of things. So talk about some of the most commonly overlooked budget watchouts and maybe some parameters that you might want to think about as you're starting this project.
Sure. The biggest challenge in a website project is not adequately scoping out what you want done for launch. Like, so what do you want this to look like at launch? And I have been guilty of that building sites, and I've ended up eating a lot of cost because I haven't scoped it out properly, because the client said, well, of course, this is what I wanted. And I'm like, okay, I have to do that for you. But so you have to be very specific about what you want. And a lot of clients that don't have web experience don't actually know the answers to questions that you ask them. So don't feel bad about the fact that if your agency asks you a question, you don't know the answer. It's a good agency or good developer should be able to pull the information out of you in other ways. So a lot of times when I'm working with web projects and somebody doesn't really know, they'll say, well, I just want it to look like this, or I want it to do this. I take those examples and I go and reverse engineer how this is done to figure out what that is. And then I try to solicit as many examples as possible from them of what they're looking for. So then I can scope it out. Because in every single project, there's going to be scope creep, every single one. You have to be able to manage that on the in-house side. You have to manage that scope creep, because usually it doesn't come from you. It comes from people above you, or from product, or from customer service or sales, or somebody else that wants something that was never asked for. And you have to manage them by saying, love this idea, let's put it in phase 2. Or if it's that important to you, what can we sacrifice in this round? And then on the agency side, if you are outsourcing it, they have to manage that internally and push back when it's going to come up against the budget. Sometimes they'll just say, yeah, sure, we can do it, and then we'll charge you extra. And then you're surprised when you get the invoice at the end of the project. I don't like doing that. I always like to push back and say, hey, I love this idea, love to do it, but it's going to cost this much time or this much extra work. Would you like to add that to the budget? And sometimes it's yes, and sometimes it's no, we don't. And it just depends on who asks for it. If the CEO asks for it, it gets done.
True. If you are doing a website, the way you described that, it means that a website isn't just a single effort. It sounds like you can do the website in phases. Is that what you usually do?
Yes. A lot of times people think of a website like a brochure, that we have to get everything perfect and then it's sent to print, and we printed 1,000, a million copies or whatever, and then we're done.
Yeah.
But no website is that way. A website should never be that way. A website should be iterative. It should be updated frequently. And that's more than once a year, people. It should be updated probably every couple of weeks, you want to update the website in some capacity, especially for content. You want to update the content.
Yeah.
But, you definitely want to be updating the website frequently over time. And that is additional functionality or new pages or, uh, you know, product specs or case studies or anything like that. But there's always going to be another phase with a website.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, your website is your storefront, right?
Mhm.
And so it's always changing because you're merchandising and you want to make it fabulous and you're learning and it has to be living and breathing, right? It's
Right.
not the stop start kind of mechanism. So I guess my question back to the budget then is, do you have like an endless number of phases or how do people manage that, you think? Or there's low level content that you can update on a regular basis, but it stays within the framework of your template, right?
Right. That would be just regular maintenance. So that would be something that would be, just ongoing maintenance that you could teach somebody or somebody in house could do it. There's depending on your content management system, there's majority of them now have been set up so that you can change the content very easily. It's a major red flag of an agency gives you a website that you can't update in house. That's a major red
Mhm,
flag.
mhm.
Like if you have to call them to change out a word on a page,
Yeah, that's a
then
no-no.
no, 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 no. And not very many agencies do that. Like I'm just all you agency people, leave me alone. Um, but anything that would change the structure of, so like let's add more pages. That's actually to me that's content, but anything that would change the functionality. So if you want to go from having multiple pages on your website to just having one single long page, that would require some changes. That would probably require a phase change. If you want to change out the graphics completely, I would consider that a new phase. But updating content on the regular to me is just something that's table stakes of having a
Hmm.
website.
I think that's helpful to know because you're right. The, I think to the lay person who doesn't understand a website, you just think of it as a static thing. You build it, boom, it's done. But really, I think there's a distinction to be made between refreshing the website so you're always having the correct content, right? You want to make sure you get good new case studies up there,
Mhm.
new customer reference quotes, new blog posts, right? That's content. But then there are also other changes though where you're expanding the functionality of the website. Maybe before you didn't have a blog site
Right.
and now you're adding it. Okay, so I think that's the phasing part in terms of building out the website that you should plan for. You should figure out what do I need minimum on the day that I launch it, but then what can come 3 months later, 6 months later, 9 months later.
Right. Right. A lot of times I see things like knowledge bases as the second
Mhm.
phase.
Oh yeah.
You know, doing a website in itself is a big project. Doing the knowledge base in itself is a big project. Doing them together is very expensive in many cases, but a knowledge base or a self-help area for customers,
Mhm.
that would be a second phase. That's a whole new functionality for a whole
Yeah.
new use case, basically.
I was going to say, Stephanie, expand on that a little bit because some people might not know what a knowledge base is. I had something called a marketplace that we developed that was it was kind of interactive and it had some key things that you could partner with our business on and so forth. But what's the knowledge base? Give us some examples of that.
The best knowledge base is I can give a shout out to HubSpot. Whenever you have a question about anything on HubSpot, you go to their help and it comes up with articles on how to do that stuff. And that's a knowledge base. Or it'll give tutorials on how to do it. How to create a list, how to schedule an email, how to create an automation. So all of that is in what is a knowledge base.
Hmm. Okay, now when you're building out a website, a lot of times you are refreshing or you're updating a website that you currently have. Or in some cases, like the project that I just went through, you're bringing multiple companies together. So now you have to take two or more separate websites, mash them together, and come up with a new company page, right? So, um, what would you say about any practical advice you can give on how to decide what content you keep, what content you leave behind, what do you need to refresh? That's a big part, I think, of also
Mhm.
figuring out a new website.
If you have your product team, your customer service team, your sales, and your executive teams all weighing in, obviously that's important. So I just want to remind everybody on that one.
Yeah.
But then you have data. Hopefully, hopefully everybody has Google Analytics on their sites, and they have they have it set up properly on the back end. And Google has made it a little bit challenging of late to do that, but you can get. I look at what is actually. I go to like which pages and posts and content are actually used and viewed to determine a priority for that content to be redeveloped or retooled or mashed up with other sites. Sometimes that content is not the same as what all of your internal teams think is important. And so that's a delicate conversation you have to have with those teams about, I know your baby is the most important baby that has ever existed in the world, and it needs to be prominently in the menu bar.
Yeah.
But nobody has ever looked at it. And I've seen that time and time and time again, where somebody thinks something is the most important thing ever, and it gets like maybe 5-page views over a year. So you want to make sure you take what gets the most amount of time, like most amount of eyeballs on it. You can also look at what's searched. If you have Search Enable on your site, you can actually see what people are searching for and what they can't find intuitively. So you want to look at those two things: what's viewed most often, and then what people are looking for, what search terms they're using to get to you. Then you can start to create content around that to make it much more intuitive to them when they first land on your site.
Yeah, I think of the great equalizer, because what you're talking about are challenges in a company based on priorities and everything, right? I mean, that's what all of our challenges are about, by the way. They're all about communication and priorities amongst, what you're focused on. And if you default to our next point, which is user experience, right? Or the audience, you'll be able to do that a little bit better. And you're saying use data as your tracker, right? To be able to say, heck, nobody's even been there. But I've been in that space where I'm taking 5 little companies and we're now integrating them into a site. And here you are, right? 5 baby owners, right? Who are all vying for, some sort of weight in that. And it's not easy, right? Because it's hard, because you also want to make sure the user experience is unified. It's great. It makes sense, even if these businesses are slightly different. How do you play in that, and what's the magic to getting that right?
That is one of the most challenging things, is because a lot of times we end up designing sites that our internal stakeholders like versus what our users need or want. And I always have to remind myself. I do this all that. Like I've worked in I've worked a lot in ed tech and education where I am not the target market. I am not the target user. Most recently I was working on a project, not with Alec, but another project where the target market was Gen Z, and I am definitely not that target market at all. So I'm designing things that don't appeal to me at all. And it hurts my soul. It really
That's the marketer's job, though, right? Right? We're
That's the
audience
marketer's job.
focused.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we have to focus on the audience. It's making sure that everybody understands what is the goal of this website. Is the goal of this website to make our internal stakeholders happy and feel good about themselves? Or is the goal of this website to get them in the door and make sales? And it's not as black and white for a lot of people, but really that is the thing. We're not here unless you're a nonprofit. And even if you're a nonprofit does not mean no profit. Unless your only goal in the world is just to provide information, pretty much every website out there has to deliver a return on spend. It has to. So if we're going to design a site that's not going to convert anybody, we're wasting our money. And that's also, then you pull in finance and have them have those tough conversations with the people and just say, hey, we're spending a lot of money on this and nobody's going to click through and convert. Are you okay with that? Everybody sign off.
Yeah. I think I think the user metrics you just mentioned are a really great equalizer for those discussions. I guess I don't know, what are some of the user metrics? You said time on the site, where they're visiting. Is there any other user metrics that we can pull out when these discussions get tricky to be able to help people understand that, maybe we got to step outside ourselves a little bit and look at the data?
Yeah. So the, pages visited, how much time is spent on that page, how, pages that are never visited, conversion paths. Google does a really great job of, you could set up events to show conversion paths. So they'll come, if they come to your main page, they click here, they click here, they click here. Hopefully you don't click that many times. Please don't let people click more than 3 times. But, how did they get to that conversion point? And Google will show you all that information. All the analytics is there. So you can see how they get to that conversion point, what they're bypassing, what they're completely ignoring. You can also put on your site heat maps to see where they're looking at the site. Like, what are they looking at the most? What is their eye drawn to the most? And then you can use that data and show people, you can show the story of your website to internal stakeholders of what are people actually looking at versus what we think is important.
One thing that I've learned is that a website, especially, can be one of the most difficult things to write content for and design, is because you have so many different types of users coming to the website, different purposes, different personas, even different ways that they want to consume information. Right? Some people want to read every single thing they can find their hands on. Other people will scan the website for 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much variability. How do you account for that when you're trying to build a website and design one? Not that you have the secret sauce answer, but just,
Well, people much smarter than me have written lots of things about this.
Yeah.
So I read what they say. I guess the easiest is to make sure that you are writing the content for your users, but also to make sure that it's indexed properly by Google or Bing or DuckDuckGo or whomever, and that it's also indexed now by AI, by LLMs.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting full circle moment for a lot of us web people, because there was a early in the web development, you basically keyword stuffed your pages. So you could put as many keywords as possible, because then it would trick Google into saying, oh, this site is important because it has all these keywords on it.
Mm-hmm.
You could put it in the metadata, which is something that's behind the scenes that their little bots find. And so you could just like shove it full. Then Google got away from that, saying, no, we're on to you folks. We're not doing that anymore. And you had to make really good quality content that matched what people were searching. And so we went through that for a long time. Now in the age of LLMs and AIs that are indexing your site, we're almost back to the keyword stuffing, but not exactly, so don't get complacent. We're in a period where there's a little bit of keyword stuffing on a page, as well as it has to be quality content that people are searching for. So it has to be both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
There's several other factors that are mixed into those algorithms for indexing things on sites and putting them into LLM results. But those are the 2 biggest things, is that the content matches what people are seeking, and it's providing valuable information, and then also, answering questions. So those go together. A lot of times people, especially in highly technical fields, forget that most people don't read very technical things. Like, even if you are a very technical person, you're not going to spend time reading very heavy technical things on a website, because your brain can't do it. Like, you have to write for people the way they speak, or the way they talk, because that is something that's much more readable and scannable. So yes, you have to have things scannable on your site, but you also have to have places where people could dive in deep. And that's just deep linking within a website, that, hey, you want to read this little synopsis? Great. you want to learn more, you can go deep and you can learn it. And if you are in a very technical field, then you can provide the source files that people can then download and read at their leisure. But most people are not going to be reading very technical, content heavy things on a website. It's really hard to do.
Okay. So I got to unpack all this. This is a lot. So I'm hearing we used to do the keyword stuffing. We stopped doing the keyword stuffing. Now we're slightly back to it because we are in the LLM space. But okay, let's talk back to, so that's one of the, maybe we're returning to it a bit. What else, because everybody's, focused on with LLMs and everything, what else should we be doing in our website content to be able to come up, more prominently in those sites? Is it the deep dive into the content, or is it more of the discussion that you would have with the sales team mainly, or all of the above?
It would be, so on the site itself, definitely deep dive into the content because that will train the LLMs. They pull from what's publicly available, as I understand it. And we know people within our CMO group that know a lot more about how the LLMs are trained. So, I'm doing high level here. Also answering questions.
Yeah.
And that's never a bad way to go, though, in marketing, is what are your users, what are your customers asking, and providing the answer to that. Because think about how you interact with, say, ChatGPT. You ask a lot of questions. So if your site can answer those questions that your customers are asking of those LLMs, then that's much more likely to be indexed into those searches or the results from the LLMs.
This morning we were just on a session, and one of the takeaways I heard also though is that with LLM stuff, like your third party content is actually right now playing an even bigger role than your own content.
Yes.
Right. So I know we're talking about websites here, but this gives you an idea of the state of marketing that we're in right now. There's so much change going on. It's kind of like it's like one day do this, next day do that, and then the next day no, go back to doing that. So it can make your head spin as a marketer. But to me, I think what it just means is like just cover your bases and do the sensible thing. Like instead of chasing the next little bit, no, go right, go left, go right, go left, right? Then I think it's more like, hey, just play it straight down the middle, but don't over rotate one way or the other, right? Try to do the right thing and across the board. I don't know. That seems like maybe
it's
that's
like common sense marketing. Remember?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
right now.
I guess so.
We've heard that before. It's like, people are over rotating on everything that's like super new, and it's like, just think about it, okay?
Yeah.
If you want your site to come up in LLMs, you have to answer the questions that people are typing in, right?
Right.
And a lot of people didn't have that data available on their website because some of those conversations were held in a sales meeting.
Yeah.
But I find that maybe it means that you should put more of that information out on the site if those are the really important things that people want to know quickly and don't want to have to talk to a salesperson to wait for.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, we had lots of, in our group, we've had lots of conversations about like the dark funnel and how all these things happen before they even walk in your door.
Yeah.
So, you have to provide a lot of information because people they'll have done 90% of their research before they even talk to a salesperson. And if you're not providing that information, your competitors are providing that information. So they're going to get the sale.
Yeah, now you have to assume that they're getting a lot of their information from LLM searches too. So possibly. I know that's why we're all trying to figure out how to crack that code.
Quick point on what you just said earlier too. I do a lot of healthcare stuff, right? So you'll have a white paper around an evidence-based piece of data. But then, and that's the deep dive, right? That some people are like, I must have the white paper. But now, we're also doing these, just position pieces afterward because people don't want to sift through a white paper. They're like, just give me the Cliff Note version of that and tell me what I need to know. So I think having both those options available is important, right?
It's very important. It warms my content loving heart, though, that content has now become much more prominent again, and anybody who's in PR loves it too because PR is back again. But the trend for a long time was like these slick, really cool websites that just didn't really say anything. We're back to actually having really good, meaningful content on websites, which makes it a little bit more tricky with hierarchy and navigation. But it, as a content person, I love it.
I think I've said this previously. I forget which episode, but it strikes me that it's a bit ironic that AI might make us try to behave more human, right? Do the right human thing.
Yes.
Which is kind of ironic. Okay, let's talk about security, website security, and then also maintenance afterwards, right? So you launch the website, but as you pointed out, like if you're on WordPress, you got to go through updates. What's your take on that? What's your view on just the process of website maintenance and upkeep? What should we expect there?
The majority of sites the WordPress sites that I work on, the website update there's a lot of things that could be automated now with your hosting provider. And the things like updating your plugins or doing weekly backups, those things can be automated. And I highly recommend that you have it automated to back up your site on a weekly basis if it's not already built in through whoever your hosting provider is. That way, in case something goes horribly wrong with a plugin, or you have like somebody decides to make a change on the homepage and it crashes the site, which happens, then you can restore a backup from a very recent occurrence. The fundamentals of security with everything else that you do online apply to your website as well. So making sure that you don't have an easy to guess password for login, making sure you don't use admin as the user ID, because that's the number one that's used the most. And hackers or nefarious people can just say admin and then just try to hack your password, especially if your password's like super easy. So making sure that you have really just good security protocols in place. I'll use LastPass, or there's a lot of other password provider, companies out there, but I use LastPass, so it generates passwords for me that are just unbelievably complicated that I can never remember. But making sure that you just have good safety hygiene for the site. That's number one. Your hosting provider should also have very good security protocols in place. There are some that run into issues more than others. You could also just, depending on what industry you're in, you want to make sure that they're compliant with different standards or regulations or laws that for your industry you're in. So as I mentioned, I've been in education, or recently with GovTech with Alec. There's a lot of security protocols in those industries that you have to make sure that your site adheres to. So making sure whatever hosting provider you have adheres to those protocols as well.
What about ADA compliance? Do you think about that?
I think about it because it's for two reasons. One, it's just the right thing to do. You want to make sure that everybody can access your website, because regardless of ability, people have money to spend. So you want to sell to them.
It's morally and commercially the right thing to do, right?
It is both right to do. Also, from a SEO standpoint, having a site more accessible is better.
You're rewarded.
Yeah. And I'll give an example that a lot of people don't think about, but images and videos and documents that are on your website to Google, and I use Google and there's Bing and there's all the other ones, but to Google, that is a black box. They don't know what's inside of it. The bots cannot see that. They cannot read it. And it's getting better with the bots being able to see things, but they generally just see a black box on your site. So if you have this really cool graphic on your site, or you have a video, or you have anything, unless you have what's called alt text, that is and that's done on the back end, like on the back end of the site, or not back end of the site, the middle end, I guess, of the site. Unless you have alt text explaining what's in that photo, or explaining what's in that video or that document, it'll never be seen by Google. And conversely, it'll never be seen by an LLM, because it's also a black box to that. So that is actually an ADA thing. Alt text is an ADA
Mm.
requirement for photos to explain what they are to people who are sight impaired or, don't have photos turned on, but mostly it's for people who are sight impaired. So having that element in there is just such an easy, quick win for SEO and for AI that a lot of sites overlook. I can't tell you how many times I'll go in to do an optimize a site and they just don't have any alt text.
Mm.
Yeah. You know what? We were told this by one of the experts that we know too, right? Who said, hey, when you're thinking about LLMs, look through the lens of ADA compliance as you, do your website strategy, and that will help you as well in that space.
Oh, for sure. And it's not just alt text. It's making sure your fonts are readable.
Mm.
Sometimes people really like a fun font, but
Yeah,
you know
no.
what? People can't read it.
Okay.
A screen reader for somebody who's sight impaired can't read or don't use too many emojis because screen readers can't read emojis.
Yeah.
Make sure
I can't wait till that leaves.
make sure
Emojis.
that the color contrast is important and it's not just for sight impaired people, it's for people who are, colorblind, which there are a lot more people who are colorblind than you know. So making sure the color contrast is within the ADA parameters. For some designers, they don't like that, but most designers are grown-ups now and they understand that they want people to actually see what's on their site.
Okay, last question. If you could give one piece of advice to a marketing leader that's doing a website project for the first time, like what would you lead with there?
Document as much as possible. So before you even start, make a list of everything that you want, everything that you need, everything that you could live without. Make sure you document every single thing that throughout the process, especially if you're doing something with somebody outsourced. And that way you can also know the progress that you're making for that site. It gets very hard, especially for large website builds or redevelopments, to forget what you did at the beginning of that project. And also forget how long you said that project was going to take. And so you make sure you want to document it as much as possible so that you know all of the things that need to come out of it, all the steps that need to occur, and that there's no big surprises.
Yeah.
Because websites can surprise you in a lot of ways. And
minimize surprises. I like that.
Minimize surprises.
Okay, that's a good one. I'll start documenting now.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie.
Stephanie, where can people go to get in touch with you if they want to get marketing help?
I'm embarrassed to say that my website sucks.
I don't even have a website, so
there you go. I am updating my website right now, but for the best part is to go to LinkedIn and find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Cool. We'll put that in the show notes. All right. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Enjoyed having you on, talking to you. Miss you already.
Oh, I miss you too. Thank you so much.